Hey, everybody, this is Jay Nathan. Thanks again for listening to the Gain, Grow, Retain podcast. Today's episode is part 2 of a conversation that we had with Lisa Pratt, who's the VP of Customer Engagement Marketing at Kronos, who has undergone a huge transformation from perpetually licensed software and services company to cloud and subscription. So part 1 was awesome. Part 2 is fantastic. Excited to share this with you. Please leave us some feedback and subscribe to the podcast.
Welcome to the Gain, Grow, Retain podcast.
When you went back to existing customers, which you've surely done by now to probably a bunch of your existing customers that were perpetually licensed early on, and you went back to them and said, okay, because they own it, right? A perpetual license means that they own it. You can't really take that back. But now you're going to them and saying, hey, we have this new thing, and you can now just continue to pay us forever, right? Maybe they pay a little bit of maintenance today, but how did let's talk about that first as part of the transition. And then I want to hear about more of how you prep the sales team to do what they needed to do to take this new cloud story out to their prospects.
Right. Well, I think that one of the things that was happening was just like a change in what was going on in IT departments, right? So as IT departments start getting strapped and more strapped, and having to manage more and more systems because technology is at everything. I mean, one of the values of cloud is, wait a second, I don't have to do it all myself. Yeah. Right. And so we went out hard with the, you don't have to do it all yourself messaging. We talked a lot about it's up to us to make sure that you're on the most recent versions, right? So kind of the whole upgrade thing is now included in your SaaS relationship. From a budgeting perspective, it's very different because you only have to, each year the amount is smaller, even though over time, it's more. And so for some people, depending on their budgeting, that actually is very attractive. So we kind of went out with those kinds of messages and, tried to figure out, okay, so who do we talk to about this and who would care about this and where would this resonate and which of our customers do we feel this is, are the best candidates for this kind of a flip. And, definitely it's interesting that, some of it was as the market was evolving. So we knew that this was a better play at the time with small businesses rather than, we have huge companies who are so let's start there. I think we just kind of looked at the advantages of cloud and knowing that people were starting to dip their toe in the water in cloud, and we just went out hard with the message.
The thing that just went through my mind there is that this is yet another really good timing thing for Kronos.
I know.
Cloud, to your point, IT was seeing the benefit of it. So you actually sort of had this magical moment where you could say, hey, this is actually better for you to hop over to this. You actually get incremental benefit for paying us, differently moving forward and probably a little bit more.
Yeah. And then the luck kind of continues in that now as the business has morphed from kind of just workforce management to human capital management. Yeah. And our buyer now has morphed into more of the HR buyer, right? Because now, people are often the most expensive part of your business. And so recognizing that there's this whole movement around you need happy employees in order to have happy customers. And so our software plays into that. And, this is what we offer has become a little bit more of a strategic buy. It's not just about punching in and punching out. It's about being able to honor, a variety of schedules to help with work-life balance. So as that has morphed, our buyer now is more kind of some of the, HR and payroll and some of the business folks. Right. And to them, this whole we have a relationship in the cloud, and this is not, I'm not authorized to buy IT software licenses, but I can explore this solution that's out there. So just as our buyer has moved to the business side, actually, that also has helped with the, this being a cloud solution. Not that IT isn't involved. I don't mean to suggest that. But Kronos has definitely benefited from some fortuitous timing.
Yeah. Well, so that actually dovetails nicely into the sales aspect of it because IT is still involved, to your point, but it's more of a data security play. It's more of a procurement strategy play in the enterprise. So I'm sure your sales team had to change the messaging certainly had to change, but how did you get the team up to speed to deal with that transition?
Yeah. So obviously a lot of training, a lot of enablement. Yeah. We had some so early on in the transformation, one of the things that we did is we put together an interactive playbook, right? So also for us, our processes, everything from who approves what to what T's and C's do we, all of that stuff was obviously had been built for on-prem. So we put together an interactive playbook. So if you're selling this, click here. Okay. That click leads you to, here's the, here's the T's and C's you want to try to negotiate. And if you get to this point and you want, like, okay, now you need to get approvals, click here. It tells you who can approve to what levels.
And choose your own adventure book.
Exactly. And okay, now you're on pricing, click here if you're doing cloud pricing, because you have different discounting that we're allowing versus on-prem.
Yeah.
So we built out an interactive playbook just as step one, because I will say our sales process, it's much cleaner now, but at the time it was not optimized for SaaS. And so we're like, all right, we're not in the position to completely scrap our sales process, but we do need to make it easier to find what you need. So that was kind of our temporary solution. The other thing we did is we built a cloud sales overlay team. So we had a small team of people who were aligned with our different sales verticals, who were deep experts in the nuts and bolts of cloud and in the nuts and bolts of the implications of the security implications and the terms and conditions or implications and all of that. And so a salesperson could get to a certain point and then pull in the overlay team to really kind of be that highly credible, yep, we know, oh, yep, here's what you're going to need, here are the implications. Yeah. So that was how, and we still have the cloud overlay team. I would say that as our sales team has gotten more savvy about selling cloud, they now are kind of using the cloud overlay team for some of the bigger, more complex deals.
The last thing that is really part of this document that we've been talking about is your metrics. So it seemed like that was a whole work stream in and of itself. And I love the table in here that talks about the outcomes and operational metrics and then your financial metrics. But
yep.
How did you even start?
Yeah, that was a tough one. It was a tough one because we knew from doing lots of research and reading, and what our kind of the upfront consultants had told us was that we were measuring our business based on kind of the old business. And there was this whole other realm of metrics that we hadn't heard of before, like ARR, right? And
yep.
Annual contract value and things that were not even on our radar. So so first we had to learn about them. And then we were trying to figure out, like, how do we even measure those? And some of them, there are some nuances in the definition, but some of it is just like, we didn't have the data to do it. So yep. there was that piece of it. Then there was the, so I was the team lead, one of the leads on that project. And I kind of looked at it and said, you know what, the end game here is retention, right? The end, like your SaaS business doesn't work if you can't retain customers for a very long time.
Right.
So this isn't necessarily about what our new bookings are. This also has to be about, like, what are we doing, like, in the middle of the journey, in the end of the journey? Like, what are all, like, where, like, there is, like, if we just have our eye on the front of the funnel, or like at the front of the journey, which is exactly the way we approached it, with the traditional license business. You get all the money up front and you don't care. I mean, not that you don't care what happens, but you got the bulk, right? You got 80% of your money up front. With SaaS, right. It's the opposite. You're only getting 20 up front. So I was really careful, and the team that worked on it was really careful about, this isn't just about replacing traditional license bookings with, an ARR or an annual contract value metric. This has got to be, how do we know across the entire journey whether or not we're going to be able to retain for long enough to be able to take advantage of that
yep.
hockey stick in revenue that doesn't come for a couple of years. So that was when we said, let's think about the customer journey and what are the metrics that we need to be tracking, not just the financial metrics, obviously that's a big part of it, but a lot of these other, like, customer sentiment and some of these other things are like precursors, right? They're like, early leading
indicators.
Exactly. So if we know that we're not getting our customers up and live quickly enough, and they're starting to get angry about the fact that they're already paying, well, they're going to start asking for credits, or they're not going to want to, they're going to say, you know what, this is taking too long, I'm going elsewhere. And they're going to, so there was this whole, like, what do we want the experience to be? How do we measure that at each stage, and then overlay that with and is our performance there jiving with how our financial performance is? And that was the way we approached it. It definitely took a lot of education, not just about the metrics, but about why we're not just looking at the financial metrics and how the linkages between them was. And I remember having a debate with one of our senior folks in finance, who I said, like, when you present this stuff, do you think you can make sure that you say what ARR is, right? Like, I don't think people know what annual recurring revenue is and why it's important, and why suddenly, all of a sudden, like, that's something that's on our reports. And they're like, well, no, everybody knows. And I'm like, they don't know.
They don't even know today.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, but if you say gross margin, your finance people probably think everybody knows what that means too.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
This isn't even a GAAP term. This is a SaaS term, ARR.
Yeah.
Right. And then you've got these other things, time to value, CSAT, NPS.
Yeah.
It's like a whole new world of things that aren't really, generally accepted accounting practice type metrics that matter tremendously.
Yes. And by the way, at the time, we were also, because we had so much of our business was still the traditional license-based business, we were presenting the metrics both ways. So they were still seeing some of the older bookings and billings and, some of the more traditional metrics, because that's what, we had to measure that, because that's what the bulk of our business was when we were starting this.
Right.
We have, flipped that. But it was so, anyways, I was able to make my point, and then they got on board, and now everything is, when we talk about it, we're very careful to explain what the metrics mean and why they're important to our business.
Yeah, and what they indicate in the future, and
exactly.
That is the perfect segue into the things that really matter from a customer success team perspective. So you didn't have a customer success team before this whole transformation either.
We didn't. That was one of the recommendations. So when the consultants came in and they said, here are the areas where you need, they're okay. What you're doing today will be okay for SaaS. And then here are the areas where you're going to need to make some significant change. And here's some areas where you need to either stop doing something or start doing something, because it's going to be an obstacle if you don't have it. And so customer success was one of these things. We're like, what's customer success?
Sounds cool.
We hadn't even heard of it here as of 4 years ago. Which is funny because now it's such a thing, right?
Right.
We built it from scratch. We did a lot of research on, as some of your listeners probably know, there are lots of different ways to do it. So we did a lot of studying of where should it report into? Should it be revenue generating? What's the coverage model, right? How many customer success managers per customer, and how much money do they have to spend with us before it makes sense for them to have somebody dedicated? And what do these people even do? And what's the relationship between customer success and sales? Because in a license-based business, sales owns the relationship, right? But in a SaaS-based business, there's a whole piece of that relationship in the middle that's happening, and it's ongoing, helping them to adopt and get value that is not revenue generating. And so that's actually not a good use of sales time,
right? Because
it's not, there are points where there's no additional revenue that are going to happen at that moment, but the customer still needs attention, but sales guy isn't going to earn any money. And, so there's that whole, how does that whole dynamic work? And so, we had a lot to figure out, and we had to build it from scratch. We had to find a leader, and
Were there moments in there where the sales team or other teams internally confused customer success for just a sort of a support function?
Oh yeah.
Like an expanded support team? How did you? Or
escalations.
Right? Yeah.
Right?
Oh, they're going to deal with all the crap that I normally have to deal with that keeps me from selling another deal.
Yes, right? Exactly. Yeah, no, yeah. We've had plenty of that. I'd say we still have that in some cases. I'd say it is a little bit lumpy. It kind of depends on how good the relationship between the salespeople and the implementation team and the customer success team is. And it also partly depends on the customer, right? Obviously you want the customer to be able to kind of drive the relationship to a certain point. But again, because we have such great retention, even of our salespeople, right? And sales is an area that traditionally has very high turnover, not just for Kronos, but in general.
Yes.
So in some of these cases, that customer has been had a relationship with that salesperson for years and years and years and years and years. And so it's their salesperson is the go-to person. So now you've got to enter in another part of the relationship, and sometimes the customer is confused. And it is I will say it is very hard to start customer success in the middle of your journey, which is what we have, which is what we did because we've been in business for a long time.
I have to believe you probably came back to that customer journey model that you had created in the beginning to help figure out, okay, we've got all these jobs that need to be done with the client over the course of our relationship with them. Now, where does the CSM plug in? Where did the salesperson used to plug in? Did you go back to the journey mapping piece to help figure that out?
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. So we have our, so we kind of did our journey mapping, and we've got all the different stages. And I have this whole document that I probably need to share more and socialize more, where for each of those things, I map out who are the players at the customer, kind of in terms of role, and who are the players at Kronos, right? And kind of who's the primary, who's the, who are the others that might be involved at any given stage. And so that we can have a full understanding of where people play. I will say that I don't want to call it compliance. That's not the right word. I'd say it maps differently depending on the customer situation. There again, like there's some customers like, okay, all right, I see that whatever. At this point, customer success should be owning that, but that's something that for the last 15 years, the sales rep has been doing with them. So does it make sense to uproot that? Maybe not. So it is a little bit fluid, but yeah, we mapped the entire customer journey to not just customer success and sales, but every role within Kronos that might possibly touch it. Going back to some of the stuff we were talking about earlier around the cross-functional nature of this.
Yeah.
Right.
Man, I bet you uncovered some deep, dark, ugly stuff through that process. Things that probably nobody even knew was happening anymore in the bowels of the company.
Yeah. Or actually, what I've discovered more is like what seems like a pretty vanilla stage in the journey. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like 8 different potential Kronites that could be touching that process. So I'd say I found more of much more of this is cross-functional than maybe I had thought previously.
Interesting.
And some of it is simply a matter of, okay, in order for that step later in the journey to happen efficiently or well, or create a good experience, something else had to have happened much earlier that maybe they didn't know they needed to do, right? Like, oh, we didn't know we were going to need that contact, a specific contact much later, so we never collected it. And then that's now causing a problem farther down the road. Yeah. Or we didn't, whatever. If certain piece of information isn't collected during the implementation, support has a harder time knowing, where to go if they're calling in for help. So I'd say, yeah, it's more that exercise highlighted the degree to which everything we do here is cross-functional.
Interconnected. Yeah. That's the benefit of looking at I call it looking at the forest for the trees. You got to know what the big plan is, and then you can start honing in and fixing individual processes.
Yeah. After 3 years, when we kind of finished implementing the 45 different things that we had been told we needed to implement, and we were getting ready to shut down the transformation office, we realized that where we hadn't finished the play was around the customer journey and really creating a differentiated customer experience, right? Like we put a lot of things in place that would definitely help us be more efficient, but had we truly mapped that to how we were going to use all of these levers to create an extraordinary customer experience. And so then as a result of that kind of they transitioned me into this role as Vice President of Customer Engagement Marketing. And so I sit in the marketing department, but I'm responsible for, and I don't mean this in any negative, we are a revenue generating organization here, but I'm responsible for essentially the pieces of marketing that are not around sales and lead generation. So right. My job, so the Voice of the Customer program and the customer community, which is, we've got over 50,000 customers and partners and clients in there. Yeah. Helping each other, answering questions, generating discussion, pointing them towards documentation. So the community falls under me. And then the customer advocacy program falls under me, and also customer marketing, where here at Kronos, customer marketing is purely around adoption, engagement, and delighting. So we're like that team is focused purely on making sure that each persona gets the information that they need to be successful with their Kronos solution. And that looks very different depending on what the different personas is. So it's all about, all right, we understand this is your business, your desired outcome. Here are the things that we have that can help you get there. And then also the delighter piece, which is all around just reminding customers that we are thinking about them every single day, and not just when we're trying to engage them in a sales cycle. We're always thinking about them, and we care about them, and we're always thinking about their success. So those are the pieces that fall under me. And so I think I kind of like to think of it as like the kinder, gentler side of marketing. And so, I have the pleasure of helping our customers from a marketing perspective just, be successful every single day.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a big part of customer success too, is having that drumbeat of communication. I love what you said about we're thinking about you all the time, not just when we're trying to get you to buy something new or adopt a new feature. It's like we're always thinking about your success. And a lot of times you can't have that across the board with just a customer success team you can't have enough consistency there and enough coverage there of your whole account base. And that's where marketing and automation and all these things come in to help provide that tide that lifts all the boats.
Yes, and to be clear, customer success is a huge partner of mine. So I'll talk to customer success and okay, what are you hearing from customers? What is your strategy? What can marketing do to help automate that? Okay, what is the messaging like? We'll help you write messaging. We can help you. So I work very, very closely with customer success to try to help them from a marketing perspective get their strategy and messaging out there as well.
Hey guys, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to the Gain, Grow, Retain podcast. If you liked what you heard, please take a moment and share the podcast with your friends and colleagues and subscribe. We really appreciate it. Talk to you soon.